Hi, it's Nathan from Serious Geeks, and today's Tactica is going to be about the new rules changes and how they may affect the future of Warhammer 40,000. As we're all aware, the information we have is very limited, but the information we do have is very intriguing. So without further ado, I will go into what we think may happen going forward. First up, we know that the modifiers to hit were going to be capped at -1 or +1 only. We're not sure from the context of the actual discussion whether this also applies to other modifiers, such as the wound roll, but I highly doubt it. In particular, because there isn't much that actually modifies the wound rolls anyway. I think there's very few units that can get a +2 to wound. Salamanders being one with Masterful Marksmanship Stern Guard, I believe. I suppose on that note, there's also Ordinary Stern Guard in any other Space Marine chapter that have access to a chaplain and Masterful Marksmanship alongside it. So it's outside the fringe cases, there's not many issues where we're going to see more than -1 or +1 to wound anyway, so I don't think it's really relevant. For this discussion, we're going to assume it's only on the hit roll, because 99% of the time that is the only time it'll ever be affecting the game in general anyway. So, with a cap on modifiers, what will this actually mean for the impact of the game? The obvious standout will be the example they used in the Q&A session, Eldari Flyers. Eldari in general can get multiple units that can stack modifiers to hit, and it is very frustrating to play against. There's nothing quite like playing a war game with your opponent and not actually being able to do anything to really put you off that war game. I've mentioned before that I really like this change, and this is the reason why. Standing there doing nothing while your opponent just rolls dice at you and kills your models is not fun for anyone. Even the person who's actually winning those games, I can't really imagine it's very fulfilling. So on a tactical sense, we're not going to see as many unkillable units on the board. This to me means that people will, if they're going to take such units, they're going to have to take multiples of those units or other units that are similar. So as an example, we may see slightly less Elder Flyers, 1 or 2 perhaps, and then more Elder Falcons and other things such as Wave Serpents, Night Spinners, or even Fire Prisms. Essentially, people are going to have to use target saturation more to keep their units alive, rather than relying on a trick that makes them unkillable. In turn, what sort of units will we see on the table that actually benefit from a cap to their modifiers? Well, a lot of vehicles that move would historically have modifiers to hit, -1 for having a heavy weapon. Now, if you're firing at a flyer whilst having a heavy weapon, that's a -2. So you can see how the modifiers are stacking up. So in that theory, there are a lot of flying units that get pluses or minuses to hit when they're firing at units that are alternative to their designated target, such as the Stormhawk, which is brilliant at killing planes and flyers, but not so good at killing non-flying units. So as they move all the time and they receive a -1 to hit those units, they're actually suffering a -2 in general, so that makes them very inefficient. However, going forward, they're only ever going to suffer a -1, which means all their shots will be hitting on 4s at the very least. So we very well may see a resurgence of some units, such as the Stormhawk, and also some units being used in slightly different manners. Why would you ever move certain units that are only going to be penalised for doing so, whereas now, the penalisation of them might not be quite as severe? Another aspect that we're told about is being able to use command points to outflank your units, to move them to the sides and deliver them where you want so they don't get automatically reduced off the table into nothing by enemy fire. This, combined with the fact that we already know that there is an obscuring tag on much of the terrain now, so that there'll be a lot more line of sight blocking areas, we actually know that the game is going to be a lot more dynamic around the table. People have to work for their shooting, they're going to have to move around. There'll be more assaults, there'll be more close range firefights. All of these rules combined imply to me that we're going to see a lot more use out of close range units, particularly ones such as Stern Guard, which can fire at long range, but actually get, with rapid fire weapons, a benefit from firing up close. Hellblasters, I think they'll see a resurgence. They were always powerful in the beginning of the edition, but they've lost a little bit of favour. But I have a feeling they'll be coming back strong, because they can come off, just like the Stern Guard, off the sides of the board and unleash hell blasters with their plasma weapons up close. Almost not like an alpha strike as such, because the opponent will have a turn before that happens in most likeliness. Certainly with an element of being able to get those shots off without being automatically removed off the table. A bit more safer, so to speak. So will this mean we'll see a resurgence of other units, such as Elder Guardians? Dire Avengers, units that basically are quite soft and easy to kill, but they produce quite a lot of firepower for their points. They're not overwhelming firepower, of course, but if you can get more turns out of them, they're obviously worth more points. So, on that basis, units that can come on the side of the board with weapons and abilities that they're not overly penalised with, such as flamers, which might not be able to reach someone on the first turn they come in. We don't know, so we can't really speculate. But, certain other weapons, such as rapid fire and assault weapons, they're going to be very useful. I really do think that it's going to be a game of close range firepower as well as long range firepower for once. And that is a good thing for the game. So in summary, for my first part, everyone is going to be using a lot more units that can come on the side of the board, or at least have the potential to do so. We're going to save points on transports. You're not going to need to have, say, Devastators in a Rhino to unleash their grav cannons before they get killed, or a drop pod. They can come in on the flank and still use them, so that's saving you 65 points approximately. Other races such as the Eldari and Tau can all of a sudden save a lot of points on transports themselves to put an actually objective scoring unit, or a load of rapid fire warriors, even from the Tau's perspective, on the enemy, on their back line, in their deployment, or at least close to it. These sort of things shouldn't be underestimated, how they're going to change the dynamic of the game. So when building a list, how do we defend against these things? We're going to have to take into consideration that maybe, even though we can have the same amount of command points with taking nothing but Terminators or Aggressors or whatever have you, we might need troops. You may need to actually spend your points on troops, because why? Troops are the cheapest option for numbers on the board for every army. Even Space Marines that have expensive models in their troops choices are still cheaper in comparison to the more elite units they have. You want your troops units to be able to hold the line, to create a footprint of your control around the board. So I think that taking a single troops choice perhaps for a patrol or whatever, or just to hold that objective at the back, is not the way to play the game. We're going to need about 2 to 3 troops choices. We're going to need 20 models or so, possibly more, to be able to actually give us some footprint around the table, to stop people from being able to come on and outflank and then, just basically get all the advantages over us in a really compromising position with pretty much basic troops. Likewise, I'm not sure I want to send my Devastators or Stern Guard out on a limb on their own. I want some numbers there with them to actually give them a little bit more bite, a little bit more staying power, and make the opponent make those choices that I don't know if they're going to make the right ones with. I mean, let's be honest, if I've got a unit of Stern Guard and a character on your flank, you're going to shoot them. However, if I have a unit of Stern Guard on your flank, as well as 2 squads of Tactical Marines, all of a sudden we've changed the dynamic of where the footprint of control is around the board. And you have to deal with that element of the board in a separate way to just picking off one squad. You can also exploit more with such troops choices, because, as an example, Primaris Intercessors, they have excellent bolters, but they're no good in the back line of your army to take in little pot shots at a couple of boys that might present themselves, especially with the Obscuring tag. You want them, again, on the side with the Stern Guard, the Aggressors. You want them to be able to put their bolters where they're going to do the most amount of damage the most often, as well as you want them to be able to move into position to take objectives. So I think troops are going to be important in this edition. It is, of course, too early to be able to tell exactly how everything's going to change and how our army lists are going to change, but I'm fairly confident with the emphasis in the Q&A that Games Workshop gave us regarding missions being an actual relevant balancing factor, command points and detachments likely having a balancing factor to encourage you to take larger detachments that don't enable you to cherry pick the elite units, with a cost to the slightly more skewed detachments such as Vanguard, Spearhead and Outrider. And again, with the actual use of numbers on the table and the need to counter the opponent's moves, I think troops are still going to have a place in the edition. I know one of my regular opponents has an Orc army that he loves to get into assault and very rarely gets the opportunity to. So if he's able to put 60 Orc boys on my doorstep straight away, at least by turn 2, due to spending a couple of CP on teleporters and outflanking, using a psychic power to jump, that is going to put a lot of pressure on my board. And if all I've got is elites units to fight him with, I won't be able to suffer the casualties to be able to go toe to toe with him. Best way to kill orc boys and other people's troops choices is with your own troops choices. So on that basis, I will be taking more troops in my army. This could obviously change. As the new rules come out, I will produce different tacticas for different elements of the game, unit tacticas as well. I definitely want to do something about target saturation, as I'm certain that it will still be a big point in the 9th edition of Warhammer 40,000, since it has been in every other edition. But in the meantime, we'll keep our ear to the ground and watch like a hawk all the news that comes out from Games Workshop to find out what exactly is happening with the game. Please like and subscribe below. I hope you've enjoyed this discussion, and I'll catch up with you soon. Peace out.